Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Football is King here on Pick Swap Media. Ryan Coyle, Nick McClay, and Matt Coates back for maybe the best, most exciting weekend of football upcoming that we've had all season. We're just going to go right down the line. We got college football on Thursday and Friday, right into NFL playoffs, 2 games on Saturday, 3 games on Sunday, and then 1 to wrap us up on Monday night. But an awesome stretch of what is that? 8 games of football, a lot on the line. You lose, you go home, your season's over. College football, you're 1 game closer to being a national champion, and NFL, you're 1 game closer to making the conference championship and potentially a Super Bowl. So a lot on the line, upcoming, awesome games. The only one that I'm really like, all right, whatever about is that Panthers-Rams game on Saturday. Everything else I could see going any possible way. So a lot of open stuff. Welcome back to the show, fellas, and how are we?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of touched on it. You blink and it's already the playoff time. It's already we only got like a month or so left of football, and it kind of sucks to say that, but both NFL and college football have brought us nothing short of a ton of storylines, and we've seen it, play out throughout the whole entire season. So there's a lot to touch on, a lot of football to talk about for this upcoming week. So excited to get into it. How about you, Matt?
Super excited. We've been talking about it. We've been teasing it all year. This is our favorite time of year. It's sad to see it come to a close, but this is what we do it for. This is what the players do it for, and this is what we love to see. Champions will be born in a few coming weeks, and there's nothing more exciting than that. So I can't wait to get into this and talk some playoff football.
All right, like I said, we're just going to go right down the line and start with college on Thursday and Friday before making our way over to the NFL. So we'll start on our first game on Thursday night with number 10 Miami versus number 6 Ole Miss. Obviously, Miami upsetting Ohio State as a 9.5, 10-point dog. At most spots where it opened up, Ole Miss upset in Georgia, and kind of we've touched on it a bunch over the last few weeks. The storylines that college football has given us have been pretty wild. The Lane Kiffin drama, obviously at Ole Miss, Trinidad Chambliss, and the story that he's had coming from Division II this year, now being one of the most electric players in all of college football, probably the most electric player left in this Final Four here. Nothing short of storylines, headlines in this matchup, though, with Miami being potentially back in 1 game away from going to the national title game. 7:30 kick on ESPN, the Fiesta Bowl down in Arizona. Hurricanes, 3-point favorite here, over under 52.5. I'll throw it over to you first, Matt. Does the Ole Miss kind of, I guess you can call it like a Cinderella type story? It's certainly like a movie potentially down the line with the head coach leaving and all the drama that's ensued since. Can they continue that story here this week against Miami?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. If the excitement factor is any indication, this team would be the national champion, especially with their performance off Georgia. They just gave us the game of the postseason. I think as fans, we're all extremely grateful for that. I mean, I don't think you guys can disagree with me when you give your takes in a second. I don't think we saw anything from Ole Miss or from Miami that should make us think Ole Miss is cooked. They have no shot. They definitely have a chance, especially if Trinidad Chambliss is continuing to play like he has so far this season, but more specifically this postseason. I got a couple friends who are Jets fans, and they were, after watching that game, they were clamoring for this guy to go to the draft. They were like, I need this guy. I mean, just the stats were ridiculous in themselves when you look at it from that game. Chambliss was 30 for 46, 362 yards, and 2 touchdowns in the air. But I think personally the eye test was even better. It was throws on the run. It was hitting guys in the breadbasket, moving targets, perfect balls all over the field. He just looked like a superstar. He looked like a guy who could take you to the playoffs. But then on the other side of this matchup, you got Miami, and what they look like is a complete football team to me. They had a defense that held Ohio State scoreless for the entire first half. Only reason Ohio State started doing anything is because they have a future all-pro wide receiver in Jeremiah Smith who put up 150 yards. So I definitely think Ole Miss has a shot. I'm going to lean Miami. I would pick Ole Miss for the points, and I would take the under in this game because of how good Miami's defense has been recently. And then the last point I'll leave you guys with in terms of Miami before passing it over. We talked about one electric quarterback in Trinidad Chambliss. I'm going to talk about the polarizing quarterback in Carson Beck. There's been a lot of takes all season long. His playoff stats so far, 33 for 46, 241 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and 4 sacks taken, no turnovers. And that's certainly not exciting, but what that is a guy who's getting it done. guy who's not putting the ball into the other team's hands. He's not turning the ball over. He's not putting his defense in harm's way. And as a result, Miami's still in this dance. And so that's why I'm going to pick them to take down the more exciting team in Ole Miss.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Matt. We touched on it, both teams coming off of the upset wins, so they're both riding high here. And, I think it's awesome to see Ole Miss here after Lane Kiffin, all that drama with all the coaches. They have a shot to make this national championship. So, those players are going to be juiced up, that chip on the shoulder. And then for Miami, are they back? They're a team that I've been very down on since the preseason, and every single time I talk about it, they just prove me wrong time and time again. And I still don't think Carson Beck is the greatest player, but you touched on it. It doesn't matter, one, when you have a defense like the Hurricanes have, and two, if you're just not turning the ball over, you're going to put your team in winning chances. And not to mention they have an insane offensive line protecting him as well. And then you look at Ole Miss and Trinidad, that story, coming from D2, to a backup. He wasn't even the starter, and now he's leading Ole Miss to a potential championship run. So, like you said, Rye, there's a ton of storylines in this one. But, when you talk about this Miami team, I think the main thing that comes away is that defense and the amount of pressure that they can put on opposing quarterbacks. There are going to be times when Trinidad is under pressure and going to have to make quick, smart decisions and escape out of the pocket. But last week, we've seen him do really well when facing the blitz and pressure and make plays kind of when you think there weren't anything available. And, he's going to have to continue that against a Miami defense that's first in pass rush period, led by Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor, two big bodies that just know how to cause chaos, get to the backfield. And I also noticed they blitz a ton of their nickel cornerbacks too. So if they want to be able to control that part of the game, Ole Miss is going to have to pick up on those blitzes. Can Kawan Lacey take some weight off of the passing game, open up the field more? And then Miami's running game, Mark Fletcher, who's looked really good in this playoffs, 262 rushing yards in the last 2 games. And again, it helps when running behind one of the better offensive lines in the country. And just looking at how Miami has won these 2 games, Carson Beck hasn't had to do too much. And if they can continue to do that, I think, you could just control the game, keep the time of possession in Miami's favor. I think that leans Miami's game. If it's fast paced, I kind of like Ole Miss in this one, but if Miami can control that tempo, I really like Miami here. So it's kind of a coin flip for me. I think I'm going to ride with you, Matt. I go with Ole Miss and the points, but lean Miami outright. But overall, I'm definitely rooting for an Ole Miss win, and I kind of hope the storyline just backs Ole Miss here. So what do you think, Rye?
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on it there, Nick. Like, what team kind of can control the tempo in this one? Because, Matt, you touched on it, and we've talked about it the past couple of weeks. Like, my biggest thing going into the year about Carson Beck was just his turnovers and his lack of taking care of the football. What he's done over these past couple of weeks, like, I hate to compare him to Jalen Hurts, but it's kind of like that, where he knows what he has behind him in that defense. He knows what he can rely on, and that if he doesn't turn the football over, he's going to give his team a chance to win these games. And Carson Beck has made a couple big throws on third down. He's used his legs on third down to extend drives and get key first downs. Can he do that in this one? But if Ole Miss is able to kind of crank up the tempo in this one and get out to just say a 10-0 start, a 14-0 start, force Miami to have to throw and come from behind all game, that's where it falls into Ole Miss's hands. And I think that's the exact opposite of what this Miami team wants to rely on. So I think whoever is able to control the tempo in this one, if Miami plays it like they played against A&M or plays it like they did against Ohio State, I think that this one is theirs for sure, because I think they're better on both lines of scrimmage. But if Trinidad Chambliss and that offense is able to have a couple explosive plays from the beginning and Miami's forced to play catch up, it could be a completely different game. So whatever team controls the tempo in this one, I think comes out on top. I'm going to continue to ride with Ole Miss here. I said at the beginning of the playoffs that there's one team that can make a run. I think I gave them out at 25-1. I think it was this Ole Miss team, because just the storyline aspect, the ability to kind of play with a chip on their shoulder, have something to prove. The underdogs, I think you essentially could say them in Indiana would be a pretty cool story. So I'm going to go with the Rebels to win this one outright, but I'm going to go with the under too. I think we see it's pretty close around that 52.5 mark. I have a 27-24 final, so kind of just hitting there. But give me the Rebels again, ride over that outright win last week, and roll into the national championship next Monday night. All right, we go to Friday night now, a rematch of a Big Ten game we saw earlier this year. Number 5, Oregon versus number 1, Indiana. 7:30 kick on ESPN, the Peach Bowl down in Atlanta. Indiana, a 3-point favorite here as they remain undefeated, over under 46.5. Nick, the Hoosiers knocked off the Ducks earlier this year at Oregon. Do you think Oregon's able to get some revenge this time around?
I mean, I don't know. I think, from that game, Hoosiers going into that, I think we're a pretty heavy underdog in that, and they came out with a 10-point win. And up until this point, Indiana's the only team that have a round 1 bye and win. So I think after last week, both teams coming into this one with pretty convincing wins. Oregon kind of just shutting down Texas Tech 23-0, while Texas Tech had one of the best defenses in the country. Oregon forced a few turnovers that really just kind of kept the game in their hands and just ran away with it. And then Indiana just absolutely dismantling Alabama in primetime in one of the most, I think you touched on it in one of your earlier shows, right? In one of the most watched playoff games, college football games in a while. And there was just never really a doubt in that. And coming into this one, I got a few questions. What does Oregon do differently to kind of slow down Indiana? Can they force Mendoza to turn the ball over? Which kind of running game shows up for each team? In the first matchup, Oregon stopped the run pretty well. They held Indiana to their lowest rushing grade all season, only 3.3 yards per carry, and allowed no runs of over 15 or more yards. So I think you also look at Mendoza. He also didn't have a great game either in that first matchup. 46 passing grade and threw a pick 6 to Brandon Finney, who we saw last week have 2 picks against Tech. So I think that's a guy that could really come up well, and their offensive line didn't play well in that first matchup against Oregon. And neither did Dante Moore. He had a 46 passing grade and was sacked 6 times. So I think two teams that match up pretty well. They know each other. But in their last game, Indiana ran all over Alabama, 215 total rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. I think this one kind of comes down to the running game. And in Oregon, they have one of the best rushing teams in the country, 206 rushing yards per game and a ton of explosive plays out of that backfield. I also think which quarterback can make the least mistakes, which quarterback can limit the turnovers, make those smart plays and not really force anything. Kind of a battle of who wants to be that number 1 pick in the upcoming draft. And I think for me, I'm just going to roll with Indiana. They've been the more consistent team as a whole. And I just think Curt Cignetti will have his guys more prepared, in my opinion. So give me Indiana to move on to the national championship.
Matt?
Yeah, you hit a lot of great points there, Nick. And I think one thing that I want to kind of double down on what you said is, including history, Indiana being the only team with the bye to win. You got to get like double XP for that. I think they're, because we talked about it last week. No one did it last year. This year we've seen 3 teams go down, and they came out in dominant fashion with the bye. So I think that's like worth taking an extra look at when you're considering this game. And you touched on some other great things. Watching that Oregon game was a little shocking. I forget, Nick, if you picked Texas Tech too, but I know we've all been high on them, and I actually picked Texas Tech to win that game. And it looks like a pretty bad pick pretty early on in that matchup. And I think the biggest thing that stood out was that Oregon defense. Like you mentioned, Brandon Finney was a monster with 2 picks and a fumble recovery. Mateo Uyunglele, he has a brother. I still can't say that last name. He had that grown man strip sack in that game. Absolutely monster plays there. But honestly, I'm going to take Indiana to win, I think, by 2 scores in this matchup. I think what they did to Alabama really impressed me. You can say what you want about Alabama and their consistency all year long. They absolutely decimated their run game that doesn't exist. The Indiana defense did. And I just think Oregon coming in, playing the Group 5 school, their first round matchup, playing a Texas Tech team that hasn't had that good of a schedule compared to these Big Ten schedules. And now coming into an Indiana team that has just continued to build momentum and steamroll. And I really, truly think that Curt Cignetti is operating at a different level right now, even though I'm a huge Dan Lanning fan. I'm gonna kind of piggyback on Ryan's take last week that aged absolutely electrically and that Indiana was going to steamroll Alabama. I'm going to pick them to do a similar thing this weekend and kind of show why they were the 1 seed and why they mean business.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm just going to keep rolling over kind of what I said last week about Indiana. I did it with Ole Miss last week. I'll do it again with Ole Miss this week. I'll say it again with Indiana. Like, they haven't given you a reason to pick against them. Alabama, I think we all kind of thought they were a fraud down the stretch this season, but still, that was an absolute steamrolling And when you look at this Indiana squad, they just do everything right. The quarterback doesn't turn the football over. They don't get penalized. They run the football. They tackle soundly. They get after the quarterback. They're extremely well coached. Just about every single box that you need to check for a really well coached football team, this Indiana Hoosiers team checks off. So no reason to get cute about it. I'm going to take them to win again. I know this Oregon team is going to be motivated, and they definitely have the guys to go out there and beat this Indiana team. But for what Indiana did against Oregon earlier in this season, there's no reason for me to pick against them. I would feel like you're going to look dumb if you wind up picking against Kurt Cignetti again and what they've been able to do. So that would set up, for me at least, an Indiana versus Ole Miss final. And I think storylines wise, that's the best thing for the entire sport. As Matt always talks about the stories like Ole Miss and everything that's going on with that program this year, and Indiana football from the ground up to a potential undefeated national champion and Big Ten champion would be a pretty wild season. So that'll wrap up the kind of college football talk here. Now we're going to get over to the big boys with the NFL. Got 6 games to break down, 3 on the NFC side, 3 on the AFC side. Looking forward to all of them, but we touched on it at the beginning. Probably we're starting off with the biggest stud on Saturday afternoon with the Rams at 12-5 as the 5 seed, traveling to the number 4 seeded Panthers 8-9. 4:30 kick on Fox. Rams a 10-point favorite. It's rare to ever see a double-digit favorite in the NFL playoffs. Over under 46.5. And I think everyone is chalking up the Rams as pretty much an automatic win in this spot. But the Panthers did just beat the Rams a few weeks ago. So, Nick, do you think the Panthers have any more magic up their sleeves, especially with the Rams kind of struggling here down the stretch?
Yeah, I think this one's pretty simple for me. And like you touched on it, even though the Panthers did pull off that upset when they played in the regular season, I just don't really see it happening again. On one side, you have the Rams, who have scored the most points in the NFL, have Matt Stafford, who threw for the most passing yards this season and is an MVP candidate, while their defense is also 6th in the league in sacks. So you look at the Panthers, who arguably could be one of the worst playoff teams in NFL history, have a point differential of -69, which is 4th worst by any playoff team since 1970. And they also won their division with a losing record, which is just the 5th time in NFL history for a team to make the playoffs with a losing record. So for me, I just think it comes down to the better team. And for me, it's the Rams. And, they've been on a little slide since that Davante Adams injury, but he seems to be coming back. And that should be a big boost for this offense. A player that led the league in touchdowns while only playing, I think it was 14, 15 games. And, I know the Panthers are a fun team, and I'm a fan of chaos. So seeing Bryce Young get a playoff win, in his first ever playoff game against an MVP candidate who's 37 years old, that would be awesome. But I just don't see it happening. Now, with the spread of 10, I could see them covering. Like, I could see like a 30-20 type of game. But either way, this is a Rams win. Chalk it up. What about you, Matt?
Yeah. You guys know me. I would absolutely love it if Bryce Young came out in Slim Reaper form and just absolutely cooked the Rams and dropped 4 touchdowns on them and sent Matthew Stafford to the retirement home and Davante Adams too. But I simply don't see it. I'm fairly certain that the Giants have a better point differential than the Panthers do this season, and the Giants are extremely far from the playoffs. So that should tell you something about what this Panthers team has been doing. I really think the Rams come out. They put up like a 14 spot in the first quarter, get off to a big lead, and then just lights out. Like, I would love it. I would love it for this game to be competitive, but I don't even see it. And I like to have a little bit of fun with my take. So I think the Rams are going to take this one. I'm even going to take them to cover, even though Nick 100% could see it with that big line. But I'm just going to take the Rams, come out. Davante Adams is back. Puka Nacua, I think, is going to do some fun things this postseason like he's done all year long. And it's just really hard to pick against this Rams team. I think Davante Adams is what puts them back to form after 2 losses in their last 3 games, one of them being to the Seahawks. But I think they're getting back to their old ways.
Yeah, I'll keep it simple. Won't go too much into this game. I'll take the Rams to win. But I'll give the Panthers the benefit of the doubt to cover the +10 here. I'll say they lose this game by 9 points. We talked about it a lot of the season, how like the Rams were the team we trusted the most, and down the stretch they really faltered. But how much of that was because they were without Davante Adams and how successful he was with Matt Stafford at the beginning of the season. Now that he's back in the lineup, we'll see how much more of a positive impact he can make. But those hamstring injuries, guys, you never know with those. Those things can act up, especially in the outdoors in the cold. Not sure exactly what the weather will be like in Carolina this weekend, but I don't think it's going to be 75 and sunny. So that's something to definitely keep an eye on, especially for this long-term health of this Rams team as they go forward in the playoffs. But I like them to definitely win this one. But I'll say the Panthers score late to make this a backdoor cover and keep it within that 10. All right, Saturday night. I think a lot more people are looking forward to this game. The 7-seeded Packers at 9-7-1 at the number 2-seeded Bears 11-6. 8:00 kick on Amazon Prime. Packers 1.5-point favorite here on the road, over under 45.5. I know this line's been moving back and forth all week, and I wouldn't be surprised at all to see the Bears actually favored around kickoff. Probably depends what book you're looking at, who's the favorite. But as of when I put this doc together this morning, the Packers were actually the favorite in this one. So I'm very surprised to see that line. Nick, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this is, two teams, that just absolutely hate each other. The two matchups that they've already played have been down to the wire, classic type of games. And Packers coming into this one after resting most of the starters. We saw what Ben Johnson had to say about it. And honestly, that Packers team have been banged up kind of all season. You lose a guy like Micah Parsons. Jordan Love has been in and out of the lineup. I feel like their wide receivers always seem to be hurt. And then you look at the Bears, coming in on a 2-game slide, but, you lose to Detroit and 49ers in games where they had chances to win, but just couldn't get it done. And two tough teams, too. So I think for me, it kind of comes down to the health and also home field advantage. I think I'm going to roll with Chicago in this one. I think just Chicago has more of an advantage against Green Bay here. Coming into Soldier Field, I think Chicago is going to be rocking. I know Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson, it's their first playoff game, so it might take a little bit of time for them to get going. But I'll say, devil's advocate, if the Packers are able to get that ground game going, I think it's going to be tough for Chicago to win. But overall, I think the advantage is just lean toward the Bears in this one. So I like a score like 20-17, maybe 24-20 with the Bears on top. What about you, Matt?
100% with you there, Nick. And I also agree with what you said, Ryan. I think all the people out there that are thinking like Nick and I, and you're feeling the Bears victory, jump on that line now because it very well may shift. This is a back and forth game that will be close. The line's going to continue to move, and especially with home advantage, it might flip pretty soon. So I'd get on that while you can. And then, Nick, I'm going to double down on home field advantage. And it's actually something we've been talking about this year with the Chicago Bears. Lambeau Field is notorious and known for their home field advantage. But something about Soldier Field and the fact that this is the first time in so long that the Bears are a legit and a good football team, that means something. And that is going to show on Saturday night when Lambeau Field and the Packers travel to Chicago for a playoff game. And look, Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson, first playoff game, there are concerns. But when I think about it, there's also concerns, massive concerns when it comes to the consistency of the Packers and Jordan Love specifically. We've talked about it before. I've talked about it a lot. Jordan Love is a massive seesaw quarterback. And so as a big Caleb Williams fan of myself, that kind of gives me a little bit of ease of mind and makes me feel better about picking the Bears in a game like this one, because the Packers are going to have similar issues with how they're going to perform in the big moments, especially with a guy like Micah Parsons unable to perform. That's that game record that could really get to a guy like Caleb Williams. And so because of the seesaw of the Packers, the home field advantage of Chicago, and just how I feel about Caleb Williams and what he's going to become, I think the Bears can get this one done. But by far, this is the game I'm most excited for this weekend.
Yeah, Matt, you hit the nail on the head. The biggest reason why I'm going against the Packers in this matchup is just that lack of consistency from this team this year. They've been so up and down. When we've seen them at their best, sure, they can look like the best team in the NFC, but we've also seen them really struggle and lay some duds this year, losing to the Browns, losing to the Panthers. What version of Jordan Love shows up? You never know, and that's the reason why I've always been so anti-Packers and haven't bought into them as a legit Super Bowl contender. And another thing that I've talked about a lot, they don't have a guy on third down that I think, okay, third down, got to have it. Let's go to this guy. Christian Watson, really nice player, but he's a down the field player. Who's your guy? Who's your go-to weapon on this Packers team? And I really think that they're kind of lacking that in a big spot here. The Bears, do they really have that elite go-to guy either? I don't think so, but I think Caleb Williams, more of a playmaker. Colson Loveland has been awesome over the past kind of 7 to 8 weeks of the season, this run game. But you also have to kind of include into this factor that Caleb Williams, it's his first playoff game. Ben Johnson, it's his first playoff game as a head coach. So a lot of unknowns in this matchup. The Packers a lot more experience on their side. Are they able to go and get the upset here? I agree with you, though, Matt. I think it's going to be a rocking atmosphere at Soldier Field. First kind of meaningful home playoff game for them in quite some time. I think probably since the double doink game, if I'm not wrong. And that is, I think, 7 years ago now or about that. Yeah, I think that was 20. I believe that was the 29th January of 2019. Yeah, so 7 years ago. That's pretty wild how long that's been. I like the Bears to find a way to get this one done at home. I think that they've had a pretty special season. I think as long as they don't get down too much and the Packers are too far ahead and able to bleed the clock out, that I think this Bears team is going to be able to use that fourth quarter magic and find a way to win again in a pretty entertaining game. So I'm going to take the Bears this one. I'm also going to go with the over. I think we see these two teams kind of go back and forth with some points. All right, we go to Sunday afternoon at 1 on CBS. The 6-seeded Bills at 12-5 at the 3-seeded Jags 13-4. Very similar to the last game, with the home team being a 1.5-point dog in this spot. Bills 1.5-point favorite here. Over under is 51.5. And another kind of head scratcher for me. Like you can make an argument why the Bills are going to win, but really to be favored. What are your thoughts on that, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I think this game, the AFC is confusing me so much right now. Just looking at the bracket, I have no clue who I think can make it. Like, I think whoever wins this game has a very good chance at making it to the Super Bowl. And this is probably the best chance for Josh Allen to finally get to that Super Bowl. There's no Patrick Mahomes, there's no Joe Burrow, there's no Lamar Jackson. And if there definitely is a path for him to finally get over that hump, but you're facing a really tough team away in the Jags, and they've looked legit to end the year, coming on an 8-game win streak. Trevor Lawrence has really found his stride the last few weeks, and not to mention they have a very good defense too. They've allowed the least amount of total rushing yards all season and the least amount per game at just 85 rushing yards allowed per game. And they've held 12 of their opponents to just under 90 total rushing yards. So I think that's something that scares the Bills. Bills need the rushing game in order to operate. They average the most rushing yards per game, and James Cook led the league in rushing yards. And when the Bills ran as a team for over 150 yards, they went 9-0 in those games. So for me, this is a coin flip game. I think it's tough to go against, either of these teams. And on one side, Josh Allen, who's been an MVP type of player, been able to lead his teams in these situations. And you have the Jags, who've been red hot and are at home. But I think the difference is the Bills on the road. They just haven't been the same Bills team on the road, and that's been for years. I think in our lifetime, I don't think they have a road playoff game, road playoff win, and Josh Allen is 0 for 4 in road playoff games. So I think as much as it seems like a good path for Josh Allen and the Bills, they're going to have to get over this hump and of winning a road playoff game. And for me, I think I just trust the Jags more at home. I don't know if I trust the Bills defense or even the coaching from what we've seen this year. So I think give me something like 28-23 with the Jags on top. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I like that. You make a lot of really good points there, Nick. And I think what it comes down to for me, is picking the Bills would be a little bit hypocritical for what I kind of talk about and kind of speak to often when it comes to picking these games. And a big part of that is consistency. When you look at the Jacksonville Jaguars, besides being pretty earlier in the year against the Bengals, they've only lost to legitimate contenders so far. They lost to the Seahawks, they lost to the Rams, and they lost to the Texans. Aside from that, they've been dominant. They've been a great football team. While I haven't been much of a Jags, I haven't been hyping them up all season long. It's pretty impressive when you look at that season-wide. It was, I think, week 3 that they lost to that Bengals team in a high-scoring affair. And then besides that, like I said, only contenders have taken them down. And then the Bills, they haven't necessarily been as consistent. They've dropped some games. They dropped a game to the Falcons. They dropped a game to the Dolphins. We saw that game against the Eagles. Obviously, the Eagles are a contender, but very sloppy game at home for Buffalo. And as much as it looks like a great opportunity for Josh Allen, given the AFC playoff picture, I just haven't seen that type of performance from him or the Bills, quite frankly, this season, for me to pick them against a team like the Jacksonville Jaguars. Put success on tape consistently this season. So while it is kind of unfortunate when we talk about storylines and I get excited to think about what Josh Allen could do this postseason, if you look at just his regular season as a sample size, I don't think he's earned my vote of confidence so far. So I'm going to take the Jaguars as the home team to go ahead, get that victory. And like you said, Nick, go ahead and look at that bracket and say, we got a fighting chance to get ourselves to San Francisco for a Super Bowl appearance.
Yeah, the biggest reason why I'm going against the Bills in this one and taking the Jags, I think we hear the cliche thrown around all the time, but football truly is the biggest team sport. And Josh Allen might be the best player on the field on Sunday. He might be the best player in the NFL. He might, whatever you want to say about Josh Allen. Right? You can make a lot of arguments for him to be the best player in this entire NFL playoffs or just the league itself. And that's all good. That's all fine and dandy. But outside of him, I don't really trust this Bills team at all. The defense has been up and down the entire year. I don't think Sean McDermott is that great of a head coach. And I'm going to make a bold prediction that if the Bills lose this game, he's on his way out as well and gets fired just like John Harbaugh. But when you look at the Jags, I think they're a much more well-rounded team. Is Trevor Lawrence a better quarterback than Josh Allen? No, but he's playing awesome football right now, and Liam Cohen is getting the most out of him. Travis Etienne has had a career revival this year after a couple down years in a row. The receiver room, whether it's Jacoby Myers, Brenton Strange at tight end, Parker Washington, our guy Nick, these guys have been playing really good football, and they've been getting the most out of them. They remind me a ton of the Bears over in the NFC, where they don't really have any superstar players, I think, but it's a really good collection of talent that's playing really well, and the Jags are maybe the hottest team in the entire league right now, and we're not giving them any respect because they're the Jacksonville Jaguars. For them to be an underdog here at the spot at home, I think is pretty ludicrous. Can the Bills win this game and people won't be surprised? For sure. But at the same time, the Jags deserve to be a favorite in this one. I think they're going to win this ball game. I think they're a much better overall team. Does Josh Allen have 10 more tricks up his sleeve to will this Bills team to another win? Who knows? That's what we watch, and that's what remains to be seen. But I love the Jags in this spot. I think they win this one, and kind of make a statement to the league that we actually have a legit shot at making a run and winning the Super Bowl this year. All right, Sunday afternoon in Philadelphia, 4:30 kick on Fox. The 6 seed 49ers at 12-5 at the 3 seed Eagles 11-6. Rematch from the NFC title game just a few years ago. Eagles 4.5-point favorite. This opened up at 3. Line moving in the Eagles' favor. Over under is 45. And Nick, the 49ers had everything in front of them last week. NFC West title on the line, number 1 seed on the line with potentially home field advantage all the way through the Super Bowl. And they laid a dog on their home on their home field last week against the Seahawks. Lost that game, only put up 3 points. Now they travel to Philadelphia to play maybe even a better defense than Seattle. Any chance that Brock Purdy goes into the Lincoln wins on Sunday?
No, even though Brock's my Iowa State guy, I got to go Eagles here. But at the same time, I don't know if I'm too confident in this pick based off of what we've seen from Philly. I think obviously we've seen the defense look really good, but offense has been pretty hard to watch for me. And 49ers were running pretty hot up until, like you said last week, only put up 3 against Seattle in a game where the 1 seed was up for grabs. Now, obviously, you don't have Trent Williams or Ricky Pearsall, but, Eagles haven't had Lane Johnson for a while. We haven't had Nakobe Dean on our defense for a little bit. So injuries go both ways. But I think this is going to be a great matchup both ways. On one hand, you have the Eagles defense going against the 49ers offense, where Niners have averaged 245 passing yards per game, which is 5th highest in the league. And then you go against the Eagles defense, who allows less than 190 yards per game this season. So, and then you flip it, you look at a struggling Eagles offense against a struggling 49ers defense. Eagles rank bottom 10 in total or yards per game, and I think we've had 7 games with a total of 40 points or less. So, I think if you want to take a nice bet here, I would go with the under. But I think I'm still riding with the Eagles in hopes that they can just kind of really find it and really focus in on what matters. And what matters is winning. And we've seen Hurts, Sirianni do that for the last 5 seasons or so. A home playoff game at the Link against a team that we've had history with the last few years. Give me the Birds at home, score of something like 20-17, 24-20, kind of hovering right around the spread and the over-under. But from a betting standpoint, I think this is probably just a stay away, maybe live bet or take some props with just the hopes of a simple Eagles win here. But yeah, just give me the Birds here. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, obviously big matchup for the two of y'all. Super locked in there. I'll try to be the unbiased third party in this one. Super interesting matchup, and you kind of highlighted the exact reasons for it, Nick. What I'm really looking at is that strength-on-strength matchup of the 49ers offense versus the Eagles defense. And obviously I'd like to pick the Niners. We know that. I'm a Giants fan. I don't want to see the Birds doing anything too crazy. But I'm not sure what receivers I'm trusting on the 49ers other than George Kittle out there. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey is an electric receiving threat in the backfield, but if Ricky Purcell isn't playing, they don't really have many guys out wide that are scaring me, especially with that extremely strong Eagles defense that is strong from the front D line all the way back to the secondary with some good corners. So that is scaring me a little bit, but we've talked about it all year long with how the Eagles have played, up and down performances, what you called, Nick, a tough offense to watch at times. So honestly, I'm struggling a little bit to make a pick here. I think I'm definitely going to take the 49ers at the points if the line stays where it is at 4.5. I think this could be a close game, and I definitely think the Niners have a chance to win. Honestly, just to be different, because I can almost guarantee I know what team Ron's going to pick here. I'm going to go with the 49ers, but I have my concerns, and that's that's a fact. I got my concerns with that pick, but you know, we're all a little biased. We can't get over that. I'm worried about that offensive threat, but I think Brock Purdy's a great quarterback, and I'm excited to see what he can do with the lovely Philadelphians at his face.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it simple. Give the Eagles the benefit of the doubt. 5-0 at home with Sirianni and Jalen Hurts. I think this team has earned the right. And I talked about this even at the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, when we started doing this show together, like when they had those matchups against the Packers, they had those matchups against the Lions. Everyone's like, oh, the Eagles are going to lose one of them. Well, they haven't really done that in the past. Why do you think they're all of a sudden going to start now? And I understand the concerns about the offense, but in spite of that, they still have won all year. And I think the winning formula is you don't turn the football over. You hope for a turnover or two from the defense and maybe one or two big plays from the offense. Make your kicks, and you're going to walk out of that with a win. It might be 17-13. It might be 14-10. But at the end of the day, it's just about moving on and hopefully hoisting another trophy in a few weeks here in February. So I'm going to roll with Philadelphia again in this one at home. I think especially if Trent Williams isn't able to play, that's a huge blow with how good this Eagles defensive line can be when they're playing at their A game. So give me the Eagles to win this one. Really ugly, low scoring. I think we see a very similar matchup to like what we saw with the Eagles in Buffalo a few weeks ago. I'm going to go Eagles 20-13. So Eagles cover that 4.5, and they also go way under the 45. The under in this matchup, probably one of my favorite plays of the weekend. All right, two matchups left, both in the AFC. The number 7 seeded Chargers, 11-6, at the number 2 seed Patriots, 14-3. 8:00 kick on NBC. Pats 3.5-point favorite here, over under 46.5. Nick, can Justin Herbert get that first playoff win and pull off the upset here in New England?
Yeah, this one's tough for me because I've been backing the Chargers all year. Even starting the year, I had them winning the AFC West. They just have had the most injuries ever, and you know they've had the most random starting offensive line group. I think with all pro potential guys like Rashawn Slater going now, Joe Alt, which is why they have had the worst graded offensive line in the league and why Herbert gets pressured the most and gets sacked the most. He took 129 quarterback hits, which was second highest single season total, according to True Media's database, which goes back to 2000. They went through 25 different 5-man offensive line combinations. And Amar and Hampton was out a bunch of weeks. Ton of injuries on the defensive side of the ball as well, with guys coming in and out of the lineup. So I know Justin Herbert doesn't have that win yet, but he hasn't had really that much around him helping him. There's been tons of injuries on both sides of the ball. We've seen how his playoff games gone the last few seasons. They blew a 27-point lead. You have Brendan Staley as a head coach. That's one excuse we can say. And then your defense allows a 27-point lead. That doesn't just go back to the quarterback. Then you look at the 4 interception game. There were one that just went right through Will Dissly's hands, right into the Houston Texans defensive back hands. And then one where I look at Ladd McConkey and I think he could have made a play on it. Probably was a tough throw, but either way, things haven't really gone Herbert's way the last few years, and it doesn't help that everyone around him is hurt. Now, on the Patriots side, you look at Drake May. He's been playing out of his mind, and you got to give flowers when you can. He's in the conversation for MVP in just his second year, with also not the best weapons around him. I know Diggs is there. He's a great player. I know Hunter Henry, he's, been a reliable target, but he's not someone that, you are that excited about. I think the duo of Ramondre Stevenson and Trevion Henderson is looked really good. But I think the main thing for me is Mike Vrabel coming in and completely changing the culture over the last few seasons in that locker room. He's one of the better head coaches in the NFL, and you can tell because whatever roster he has, the players are just behind him and play for him. He gets the guys to buy in, and he's someone that guys love playing for, and it shows. But one thing that scares me is their strength of schedule. They haven't beat anyone good, and that matters when coming into the playoffs. Their defensive line scares me a lot. Their offensive line kind of scares me a lot. And so, how good of a season was it really for the Patriots? How do you take into account the teams that they play? And for me, I've been all over the Chargers since the preseason, like I said, so it kind of pains me to say it. I think the Patriots do win. I think I'm going to take the Chargers to cover, but I think that the Patriots do end up winning. But again, I'm going to be rooting for the Chargers from, obviously having them to start the season, but also being a Herbert believer and thinking that he's a player, he's a franchise quarterback that can, take a team, maybe not this year to a Super Bowl, but he has the talent to take, a team there. And you touched on it, Rye. Football is the biggest team sport that we have, and it shows in this scenario. So give me Patriots outright, Chargers to cover, but I'm really backing the Chargers to win this one. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, that was Nick. That was a little bit like a WWE plot twist there. I didn't think you're gonna pick once you got there. I really thought you were gonna give your Chargers the flowers, but yeah. I'm with you. I'm with you on a lot of that. I'm gonna boil it down to just I think the Patriots are a little bit more of a complete team. I think the schedule is definitely something that worries me, but that's more one of those things where I think they're gonna get through the Chargers this week, and then whatever their matchup is next week, that's when I'm gonna start to throw my hands up and be like, I don't really know what to say about this team. I think Jim Harbaugh is a good football coach, but I think Mike Vrabel is a better football coach. And just what you said, Nick, he really gets his guys to rally behind him, play with him. Stephon Diggs has had one of the best, I think, career progressions from a maturity standpoint in football in recent memory. And so they got guys like that leading this team, even with young guys in the quarterback position in Drake May, obviously. But so, yeah, I'm just going to take what I think is a more complete team in this matchup, a less injured team in the Patriots. And if we get to next weekend and they're still in the hunt, I'm probably going to throw my hands up and tell you I don't know what to say. But for now, I think I'm trusting the Patriots to win this game.
Yeah, the biggest thing with this Chargers team has been that offensive line all year. Like, are they able to just be somewhat competent in this one? And I think when you look at the AFC, there's a few tough matchups that they avoided. Like, if they had to play the Broncos, I would have been much less convinced that they could win this game. If they had to play the Texans, I would be much less convinced. But when you look at this Patriots defensive line and pass rush, sure, it's like a solid, respectable unit, but I don't think they're a game wrecker that's going to completely ruin this game. And with the cold weather, the bad atmosphere up there in New England, like, they're going to play Jim Harbaugh football. They're going to try and run the football. Hopefully Herbert is able to take care of the football. And that defense has been opportunistic all year. Like, say what you want about the Eagles offense all year. They still haven't really turned the football over, and they had the worst possible turnover scenario game against this Chargers team. This is a Chargers team that flies around, can make some plays, and Drake May has been awesome at taking care of the football. But we talked about it too with Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson. Like, this is a different scenario. This is your first ever playoff game. The Chargers have had some guys that have played in playoff games before. They have Jim Harbaugh, who's been a really successful coach in the playoffs before. You don't have to be the best team 17 weeks out of the season like the Patriots were right up there kind of with the Broncos, but you just have to be the best team on that afternoon. And I think the Chargers and the way that they can play, the way that they can muck up the game and make it a 14-10, a 17-13 game, they kind of have that style in their blood, in their DNA to make this a sloppy game and play it in their favor. So I do think we're going to see one upset that really catches some people off guard in this one. I'm going to ride with the Chargers here in this game too. Give my boy Justin Herbert his first playoff win, hopefully, so we don't ever have to hear Bernard talk about it again in our lives. But I'm going to go with the Chargers in this one. I'll ride with Justin Herbert till the wheels fall off, as I think it was Chris Long said, a seat at the adult table, and actually, watch the game and not just throw out some takes and see that Justin Herbert is basically playing like Superman each week out there. So give me the Chargers to win and pull off an upset that I don't think a lot of people are going to see coming. So wrap it up Monday night. AFC again, the number 5 seed Texans at 12-5 at the number 4 seed Steelers 10-7, coming off a crazy game, maybe the game of the year in the NFL on Sunday night. 8:15 kick on ESPN. Texans 3-point favorite here, over under 39.5. I'll start it off with this one. And I want you guys to kind of chime in as well now that we went through all the matchups. But out of the NFC, I have the Eagles going to the Super Bowl. And out of the AFC, I saw you touch on it today on Twitter, Nick, but the Texans are my team out of the AFC. I think that defense is a group that can show up each and every week. They have a few years now of playoff experience under their belt with DeMeco Ryans and C.J. Stroud. In that duo, this defense can be scary, and especially against a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers, his lack of mobility, that pass rusher is going to be able to get at him, engulf him, and really this is probably the matchup that this team wanted the least. I think out of any of the teams, I think they would have probably rather taken their chances against the Bills out of the wild card and the Chargers out of the wild card. They get the Texans, and I think the Texans go in there and kind of swallow up Aaron Rodgers in this one. That defense comes to play, and I think this is a really low-scoring game. I love the Texans here, under 39.5, big time. But the Steelers, 19 wins in a row, I think, on Monday Night Football at Heinz Field or Acrisure Stadium, whatever the hell they call it now. Pretty insane there. But I think we get a defensive-minded matchup in the Super Bowl with the Texans and the Eagles.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on it because this Texans team, I've kind of been on all year. Heading into the season, I don't think I took them to win their division, but I had C.J. Stroud to have the most passing yards and Nico Collins to have the most receiving yards. Obviously, it didn't pan out, but I'm a believer in Stroud. And if you have a defense like this that Houston has, you just don't turn the ball over, score 20 or so points, and you should be able to compete. This is going to be a defensive battle, and this is probably, the game that I'm probably looking forward to most. I love watching two tough physical defenses just go at it, and that's what these teams are going to do. And one thing I've learned, you just kind of touched on it, Rye, when looking over this game, the Steelers have won 23 straight Monday night home games going back to 1991. The Texans didn't even exist the last times the Steelers lost a Monday home game. And it obviously happens to be a home playoff game. The Texans have never won a road playoff game in franchise history, going 0-6. But I'm going against the trends. I'm rolling with you, Rye. I'm rolling with Houston. I just think the Steelers are one of the more unpredictable teams in the league, and it's kind of hard for me to trust them. They beat the Patriots, and then you end up losing to the Browns. And for Houston, it kind of depends on if their offense can score points. They put up 44 points in Week 5 against the Ravens, but that's the only road game where they scored over 20 points all season. So could definitely go either way, but I'm trusting the Texans defense to get to Aaron Rodgers, cause some chaos in the backfield. Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson going to get some pressure on and maybe force Rodgers to throw a pick to Derek Stingley in that tough defensive back room. But also, you touched on it, right? Also, the last time we saw Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs was a 13-10 loss to the 49ers, where Rodgers was sacked 5 times, didn't throw a touchdown. Obviously, that was a few years ago, but DeMeco Collins was the defensive coordinator for San Fran at the time. So I think this is another low-scoring battle with Houston coming out on top, something like 20-17, leaning the under, and Houston in this one. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, before I looked at the line, I was fully ready to come on here and say I was going to take the Steelers spread. And I feel like the 3-point spread is not what I expected heading to this game. I think honestly, Vegas is giving Pittsburgh a lot more respect than I anticipated. Maybe they're expecting that offense can actually be competent again with DK Metcalf back, which would be exciting for football fans to watch for sure. So yeah, that line kind of threw me off a little bit. It was almost a bit of a trap, but yeah, it will be an exciting matchup with 2 elite defenses. It was great to see TJ Watt back last week with such a freak injury like that. You weren't sure how he would play, and then that pick fell right in his hands there, which I think kind of helped give him some momentum to get right back into the swing of things. And then obviously the rest of that defense is extremely talented. I would love to pick the Steelers in this one, but my heart of hearts just can't really get it done. Watching that final drive against the Browns when they lost that game, I feel like the Arthur Smith play calling once they get in the red zone has just been atrocious. And I mean, this is what we saw back when he was coaching Atlanta. They ran 4 verts 4 straight times and threw at Denzel Ward every single time with no DK Metcalf. And it's even I can call better plays than this in Madden, and I obviously know no ball. So that was absolutely ridiculous to be a part of and to watch. So because of that offensive play calling and then a defensive strength for the Texans, even with a good Pittsburgh defense, I'm going to have to go there. And then I'll round it out with my picks, going back to what you said. You said, Rye, for AFC and NFC winners. In the AFC, I am going to go with the Jacksonville Jaguars, actually. I really think this is going to be a crapshoot, but I can truly see them getting something done there. And then in the NFC, it's really, honestly, it had to be, in my mind, had to be one of the NFC West teams just based on what I've talked about all season long. And I'm going to give that nod to the Rams because I think I've been giving them the most love. And maybe if the 49ers had gotten the win and gotten the 1 seed, I would have picked them. Excuse me, but a tough first round matchup here that they might not even get past, and a Rams team that I've loved all year long. I'm going to give them another nod. So let's see a 49ers versus Jaguars matchup. No, excuse me, a Rams versus Jaguars matchup in the 49ers Stadium in February. Who would have expected that? Trevor Lawrence, long hair in San Francisco. Gotta love it. Give me it.
Did you do your Super Bowl teams, Nick?
Yeah, I did. Oh, I feel this AFC has got me in a blender. I think right now I have the Broncos and the Eagles right now. Obviously, Eagles from a biased standpoint, but I just think the Eagles get the job done by winning games. It's never going to be pretty, but I trust the Eagles. And if it were another team, it would be the Rams. So right now, gun to my head, Eagles with also an option with the Rams, and then AFC. Just I have the Broncos right now, but I think whoever wins that Buffalo Jags game, I think has a path to get there. And right now, I have the Jags, and then for me, it would be Broncos playing the Texans, and then Patriots playing the Jags, and then next round matchup. And I think I trust Denver at home against Houston. I really don't know, but I did sprinkle on Houston to win it all. Put a little wager on them 12-1. But gun to my head, I'm going Birds and Broncos.
Yeah, I think besides, I'd say, at least for me, the Panthers and the Steelers, I could see any of those other teams, 12 teams who are in the Super Bowl. I wouldn't be shocked. Sure, there's some teams I think it's a little bit more far-fetched, but I really think there's a legitimate 8 teams that could win it this year. So should be a really exciting weekend of football starting off on Thursday night tomorrow. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. A lot of people hopping in tonight. Appreciate it, as always. Please please subscribe. We'll be back next week to break down the college football title game and then the NFL divisional round as well. So thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We'll be back next week. Have a great weekend and enjoy the football.